Welcome everyone to the 2023 launch of the Nash Squared Digital Leadership Report. We are the world's largest and longest running study of technology leadership, and this year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. In this video, we're going to capture 8 key highlights from this year's report. It's part of a whole series of videos where we present and discuss the findings. And you can find these along with the main report, which contains fascinating retrospectives from the last 25 years on our dedicated microsite. So what are the key themes from this year? Well, as we entered 2023, it seemed like a day couldn't pass without another announcement of headcount freezes from the biggest names in tech. But actually, what our report tells us is that technology investment globally remains relatively healthy. After the hyper-growth that we saw both during and coming out of the pandemic, expectations of technology spend and investment in people have returned to more normal levels. Almost half of digital leaders expect their overall technology budget to increase during the next 12 months. Now that's a figure that's broadly in line with pre-pandemic years. You can see more detail on this, as well as all the other data I talk about in this video in the main report and microsite. Now I don't need to tell you that one topic that has really grabbed the attention of both the media and digital leaders in the last year has been artificial intelligence. While AI has been with us for some time, it's been the arrival of large-scale generative AI that has led many to believe we are at a tipping point. It's causing excitement, confusion, and concern in apparently equal measure. And that's no surprise. Only 15% of digital leaders feel very or extremely well prepared for the demands of generative AI. 42% feel unprepared. Only 2 in 10 survey respondents have an AI policy in place, leaving almost 8 in 10 without one. More than a third of organisations have no plans to even attempt such a policy in the near future. Our respondents wholly acknowledge that AI requires heavier regulation. 9 in 10 assert this, but most believe that regulation will not solve the issue regardless of its presence. In other words, the horse has bolted and there won't be a fence strong enough to contain it. Now, we asked our respondents, what are the top 2 issues facing generative AI? After regulation, more than a third of digital leaders are concerned about data privacy. The next 2 big issues focus on data trust, so hallucinations, where the AI sees patterns that don't really exist, and then data bias, where the AI uses data sources that don't truly reflect the real world. These are big concerns for more than 1 in 5. Despite impressive predicted market growth, the actual use of AI inside organisations is relatively low. Only 10% of organisations report having large-scale implementations of AI, and this figure has remained the same over the last 5 years. So, will AI continue this modest growth path moving forward, or will it now accelerate? There is no doubt the rise of generative AI might be the trigger that sees it follow a path similar to cloud investment. Given how unprepared we seem to be, many digital leaders feel we are entering something of a Wild West. But despite this, more than 7 in 10 digital leaders think that the benefits of AI outweigh the risks. Moving on to cyber, our data shows that the number of digital leaders reporting a major attack continues to fall away, with less than a quarter reporting one in this year's survey. The rate increases to 44% of digital leaders from large companies, but this is down considerably from 56% last year. This appears to contradict the number of well-reported cyber infringements happening all over the world, and it illustrates how complex this topic is, as well as how our view of cyber risk is evolving. What is clear is that the shape of attacks is changing. The biggest jumps in perceived threats come from foreign powers and from competitors. Placed alongside the ever-present threat from organised crime, it's clear that cyber criminals have significant resources and sophistication. But what of the future? Well, as we covered previously, with generative AI, we are potentially standing on the edge of a leap in technology. The success of cyber attacks is often dependent on their ability to scale and the ability to mimic real humans. Generative AI has the potential to take cybercrime to a whole new level. This year sees headcount growth expectations decline, jumping from an all-time peak to something more in line with the decade prior to the pandemic. The focus for organisations has moved from growing headcount to retaining, engaging and building the effectiveness of their existing teams. That said, we shouldn't forget that this still means that half of companies expect to grow their headcount, and that this is the second highest reading in the last decade outside of the pandemic peak. The reduction in recruitment has also resulted in an easing of the skills shortage, down from 70% last year to 54% this year. The most scarce skills are data engineers, enterprise architects, software engineers, and technical architects. In previous reports, cybersecurity skills have occupied the top 3 most scarce skills, but this year has seen one of the largest falls in demand here as digital leaders focus on top-line growth priorities. Economies are feeling the pressure, and in a slight increase on last year's figure, almost 2/3 of respondents say that the rising cost of living is making salary demands unsustainable. The problem is particularly acute for our Asia-Pacific respondents, where 78% of digital leaders reported this. Last year, we reported how remote working was good for productivity, and for many it added valuable flexibility in their life, not to mention more money in their pocket through saved commuter trips. But it wasn't all good news. Remote working also seemed to be having a negative impact on people's ability to collaborate and innovate, and there were growing concerns over mental health. This was especially the case for younger employees. In the last 12 months, a number of big companies have put in place much clearer policies for getting people back into the office. One major investment bank has even gone as far as saying it has to be 5 days per week. While these big companies paint one picture, our own research, which covers a much wider spectrum of organisations, paints a more nuanced view. On average, 58% of our respondents have a work at office policy. In other words, one that asks employees to work in the office for at least 1 day a week. Larger organisations are more likely to have one. Smaller organisations typically expect 2 days a week and larger ones 3 days. However, when it comes to attracting women into your technology team, it's clear that increased flexibility makes a real difference. Our research shows that a policy that mandates 1 or 2 days in the office correlates with almost 1/3 more female tech hires than a policy that mandates a full 5 days in the office. Now, if you're looking for good news on sustainability, look away, because this year's findings might make for worrying viewing. Just under half of all the digital leaders we surveyed said that their organisation had no plan in place to reach net zero. This includes 28% of digital leaders answering on behalf of publicly owned companies. When looking at this from a sector perspective, technology companies are the worst offenders, with almost 6 in 10 lacking a plan. The heavier industries, such as construction, transport and manufacturing, appear to be more prepared. Where digital leaders do have plans in place, a quarter set their sights on 2030 to reach their goal, with 18% looking further into the future. For those who've set themselves a target, there is more positive news, with 59% expecting to reach it and almost everyone getting close. One thing is certain, a miracle solution isn't just over the horizon. Digital leaders will need to find the right way to use technology if they are committing to a more sustainable industry. Take one small fact. The average carbon footprint of an email is 0.3 grams of CO2 equivalent, or if it's got one image or an attachment, it's 50 grams of CO2 equivalent. Organisations will need to embrace incremental developments. Just leaving your logo off a company email could make a small difference. So into all this steps the digital leader. One thing is without question, the board recognises the value and potential of technology. In the past, this value was inextricably linked with the value of the digital leader. But in 2017, we began to see a decline in executive committee membership. This was a period that saw technology become increasingly owned and operated from outside the traditional technology team. More recently, membership has climbed up again. The influence of the digital leader tends to grow when there are new technology challenges emerging or new opportunities that require a technologist's viewpoint from the outset. Right now, with the proliferation of new technologies like generative AI, digital leaders can offer a unique and valuable perspective. One thing is for certain, when digital leaders are given a seat at the top table, this delivers advantages when it comes to outperforming the competition across many metrics, including a 20% uplift on adopting new technology and a 24% advantage in attracting and retaining talent. It has never been more valuable to have a digital leader on the board. And it appears the role of the digital leader has never been more important. So, in 25 years of the Digital Leadership Report, what have we learnt? Well, at the beginning of 1998, the internet was largely a place for email and online brochures, with a little e-commerce just beginning. Amazon.com simply sold books. Facebook and YouTube weren't around, and Google had yet to take its first live search. We were 1 year away from the launch of the BlackBerry smartphone. Since then, we've had a technology revolution. More than half of the planet are now active on social media. We hold smartphones in our hands today that, if we went back to 1998, would be in the world's top 500 most powerful computers. We've had the exponential growth of the cloud, which has revolutionised how and where software is developed. And we've had the growth of artificial intelligence, automation and data analytics. The list goes on. And the result is that technology has moved from being a support act to something that is fundamental to organisations and to society. What have we learned? Well, one thing is for sure, the progress of technology never stops. But what of the future? I would like to invite you to continue your journey by reading the Digital Leadership Report itself, which contains views from experts from across the world on where they see technology going. We also have 3 further videos where we discuss the report's findings and their future implications. It has never been a more exciting time to be a digital leader.